Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners and viewers around the globe. Today we have a very interesting person, Kimberly Haley-Coleman, who's the founder of the NGO Globaware. Kimberly, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. Welcome to the show.
Anil, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Kimberly, without further ado, let me ask you straight into the question. What first stirred your heart towards service and led to founding Globaware?
So, it's interesting. I had a very traditional exposure to service before doing this in terms of, being in Girl Scout related activities and school service, neighborhood initiatives, things like that. So it was actually not something that I set out to do. It was something that happened a bit more on accident. I was in the for-profit world and found myself, I was always in international business, and I found myself overseas without my friends and family, and having already seen the sites, wanting to make my time meaningful. And so I just asked if there was any sort of service I could do, and found it was really a surprise to me that nobody really wanted to create volunteer opportunities if they were short term, because you're taking somebody off of whatever they're normally doing to oversee and supervise. And so I started doing, I don't know, somehow just knowing that was a challenge made me want to try and serve anyway. And I found that doing that, serving just one-on-one and community to community like that, was so fulfilling. And I came back just on fire about how wonderful it was, and then shocked to find so many other people wanted to do the same thing and would come back with me as I would return. And that's really what led to it. So it was kind of accidental.
Well, we all have our callings.
Yes.
Absolutely. Such a wonderful story. Now, we understand you left your Wall Street for latrines and jungle toilets. What was the inner turning point behind that leap?
Yeah. So, when I had those first experiences serving directly, while I was definitely on that fire was lit and I really wanted to do it and continue as soon as I could, it took a couple of years of putting things in place where I was able to leave behind all of my prior work. And, each of our projects and programs is very different. So, if you're going on our program in India as opposed to Guatemala or Cambodia, all of the projects are very different. And so over time they were developed. And in some cases we would start a project where, hey, it wasn't a good fit and we ended up having to change or pivot. In others, we've been able to continue the same project continually over and over. So getting to what the specific project was that would work with each community has really been something that's evolved over time and really developed by the local community in conjunction with our coordinator, who in all cases except for one, the coordinator is from that community. The only exception we have to that is our coordinator in Guatemala. She has lived in Guatemala for 45 years, but she was actually born in Canada. But all the rest, because they are leading that project and program, it is locally driven, local methods. We hire local foremen and expertise to guide our project. And so there's actually a turning point for each one of those programs where it took us time to get to that specific stage. In Kenya, we're building wattle and daub style homes, and that's all led locally. So each project actually has its own evolution.
Oh, that's so amazing, for people to really do that. And I think what you said, having local for vocal voices, I think that makes a lot of sense, creates a
Yeah.
lot of employment even locally. Now,
Yeah, and for us, it ensures that it's something that's actually needed and wanted, and then that our volunteers aren't coming from outside the community trying to tell the local community what it is they need and how to fix their issues, because the local community, any community, already knows what they feel they need. And we see ourselves very much as equal partners that are standing side by side with local communities to address whatever their issues are. And, because we work in quite a few communities where we're working with animal related projects, and those vary so much depending on that community. So, for example, in Costa Rica and the Galapagos, there's a lot of conservation and preservation that is happening. And in places like Zimbabwe, where there is animal wildlife conflict that is hard to imagine in other countries, they're facing a very different relationship with animals and how they view them and what is needed. So, in Zimbabwe, for example, where elephants may come into rural areas and take out a local garden, or lions are, it sounds terrible to say, it seems so far away for people who aren't faced with it, but maul community members. And these are communities where they don't have access to barbed wire and high impact lighting that would scare them away. So how do you preserve the wildlife and protect the humans? These are, the kinds of questions that we're faced with that vary so much project to program.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now, were there moments in your childhood or early career that hinted at this calling?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I can think of various projects that I may have been involved in as a kid, but it was actually the interaction with the humans over whatever the project was that have really stayed with me, I would say. But in terms of, it's interesting when it comes to what would have foreseen where my career went. It's really a bit of a mystery because I had such a circuitous background leading up to this. What I can say is that I was always interested in other cultures. And I credit my grandmother, for example, who was always traveling as I grew up. And she wasn't, going to Florida and Europe. She was going to places like India and coming back and talking about that and the kinds of food she ate and the people she saw. And that really is probably the initial allure I remember having in terms of wanting to connect with other cultures, as someone else who had done that. And I came back and was so excited, instead of being afraid or worried or seeing another culture as being scary or different, instead seeing it as a human connection point that always resonated with me in terms of wanting to interact with other cultures. And so, in college, I double majored in French and art history, minored in Italian and marketing, and then I got my master's in art history, not knowing at all what I was going to do before getting an MBA in international business. And the common thread really to all of this was that piece of having lots of different countries and cultures represented, whether it was languages or their art or how business was conducted, that it was those cultural differences and conditioning that make our planet so interesting and not just painted with one brush, that I feel like was always something that intrigued me.
Absolutely. I think when you travel across different cultures, you learn a lot because, as far as I'm concerned, I've also trotted about 3/4 of the globe. I was fortunate enough. So, you know, when I started my career way back in 90s, and I had to travel a lot to the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and all these places. Coming from India, it gave me a very different perspective of meeting people, cultures, how people do business, how you communicate, and how you respect. It's not only, you learn different cultures. I mean, I remember back in Taiwan when I was in 1990s, and I used to interact with a lot of people, especially from US. And the first thing most of these, Americans did was learn the local language. And that was such a point, because then you don't feel alienated. Even people, when they communicate with you, it's like they're communicating openly. So that's where even I learned, if you want to learn the culture, you need to learn the language first.
Yeah, I agree. And, it'll be interesting to see how technology will impact any of that. There are so many tools for translation now.
Absolutely.
Wonder, it could go two ways. Will it mean that a lot more people will be willing to put themselves out there and not so worried about a language barrier? Or will it mean less people bother to actually learn the language of other languages since they've got this tool they're carrying around? It'll be really interesting to see how it impacts future generations.
Absolutely. That's something that is very debatable. But I think with the tools available, the AI tools available today, it becomes much easier. You don't have to put in the efforts. I remember back in 90s, the kind of effort you had to put in to learn a language. It took time, months. But today, I think at the tip of your finger, you have all the access available, and you don't need to put in that hard work. So yes, I think, and let's be very honest, we humans are lazy at times,
Yeah.
Now, across 25 plus countries, which experience most surprised you about human resilience or kindness?
There's so many examples, and the volunteers who come in our programs are all, one thing they do obviously share is this desire to give back. And when they arrive in country, I would say one of the most surprising things is how they find locally they are very willing and open to share their own lives and to give a real generosity of spirit in terms of sharing that with our volunteers. Our volunteers are signing up for this, so we know they're kind. We know they're the kind of people who want to serve. It's interesting to see the local communities respond openly and warmly, because there are plenty of examples in history, particularly from North America, where efforts may have started from a good place with good intentions, but ended up being trying to force one culture's way down the throats of another. And, fortunately, with the way our programs are structured, that the local communities see that that's not what we're there to do. And so I've just time and time again been amazed at the kindness and generosity I've seen by our local communities to work with us and to live with us and let us see a piece of their lives and share some of the moments, so that when our volunteers return home, they feel like they've got a larger global view. And that is something that is offered by the local communities, where they could be closed off, but for whatever reason, they've been really open. And in terms of sharing what's important to the communities where we work, it's an interesting platform to see that we all have the same fears and hopes and desires. We want the same things for our children. We don't want them going to bed hungry at night. We don't want to hear bombs going off, and we want to make sure they have some way to support themselves. And, the role of animals in our lives, whether it's as a companion or for protection or as a part of the nature and wildlife that we appreciate and respect, that you see people who have all of those relationships with animals in every culture where we work. So it's just really a unifying thing to see. And I really feel like that's a kindness, because it doesn't have to be offered, and yet it is. So I'd say that.
That's so true. Could you share a volunteer story where animals played a healing or unifying role?
Sure. I'll say, so when it comes to healing, our conservation efforts tend to be a bigger part of where we park our efforts. Um, I'll give you an example. So, in Costa Rica, leatherback sea turtles, their eggs are taken from mothers as they lay them, because some of the local communities see that as like Viagra, something to enhance male libido, even though there's been no evidence that that's the case. And so, fortunately, as the kind of effort it takes to stop it, you don't need lots of huge technology. You really just need people monitoring the beaches, and that's enough to discourage most people from interfering with mother laying her eggs. And then once they've been laid, taking those eggs and moving them over into a nursery where they can be monitored until they hatch. That's really all it takes. The local communities where we've been working have really supported us and shown, they'll come and bring us food and come and talk with us and share their stories. And so it's bringing us, when we're working in these communities, this unifying, harmonious project that we otherwise would not be there having out, under a full moon as the babies are hatching. We would not be having this. So somehow this act of bonding over saving leatherback sea turtles has brought about this human engagement between the people who are coming from largely North America to the communities where we serve, in a way that wouldn't have happened otherwise. This form of bringing people from very different cultures together, crossing this cultural divide, healing some, we have certainly plenty of divisions going on in our own country right now. And yet here we have these examples of humanity coming together over the saving animal wildlife. And it's a really magical thing to see, I have to say.
Absolutely. It's so inspiring and magical to hear stories like this,
Whoops, I cannot hear you.
Am I audible?
I'm not sure if...
Am I?
Now I can hear you. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry.
No problems. Don't worry. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all going to be edited. I mean, whatever we need to cut and do that. Great. So we're absolutely comfortable about that. Now, that was a very inspiring story, to be honest. And it was really magical, saving the sea turtle eggs. Haley, moving forward, have you witnessed hope bloom in unlikely places through small acts of service? Like, I know, what you just mentioned, it's also a lot of hope that was there, I mean, giving hope to the sea turtle, the babies. But have you witnessed hope bloom in unlikely places?
Just everywhere you look on any of our projects and programs. And the really amazing thing to me is to see the volunteers who participate in our program will find their own ways of giving back and serving when they're already there. And I'll give you an example. In the Philippines, we had a group of, I don't know, 50 people that had come together. And while we were walking through the community one day, we were chatting with a family, and a baby had just been born with a pretty dire blood disease without the resources to do anything about it. And the family, Casey and Chelsea, decided to pay all of the medical costs to save this baby. And we didn't foresee that, and it really made that local community and family feel, hope for a future that they wouldn't have been able to anticipate. But yeah, we see those kinds of acts of service and that lead to hope for really everybody too. The idea that somebody can be empowered to change lives and save lives, really with the different resources we have available to us. So yes,
hope, and that's so humane of your friends to do that. Very rarely we find stories like this where people do support or empower others, and saving lives. But yeah, it's a good karma if you look at it from a different perspective, from a spiritual perspective. Now, volunteerism has mixed perceptions. How do you define responsible service travel?
Yeah, so this space has had justifiably some negative connotations with it in the last, particularly I'd say last 10 to 15 years, with words like white man, savior complex, and so forth. And usually this has to do with what we feel is unethical service, where they might be leaving volunteers unsupervised with children, putting them in a vulnerable position, or they may be trying to tell the local community what it is they need rather than listening and learning. So it's those kinds of things that we're trying to do to make sure that we're providing service opportunities that are done responsibly. I'm a part of an organization called IVPA, International Volunteer Programs Association, which is an organization that tries to ensure a whole bunch of quality initiatives about how an organization carries about service. Everything from what kinds of insurance and medical care is given to who's running the program and so forth. And because these are not my friends and family that are on these programs, whoever signs up to participate in our short-term programs is who shows up. So the structure of what and how we offer it is really what leads to whether things are done responsibly and in an ethical way. And that's part of it, making sure that our local coordinator is leading the projects, that they're being led first and foremost by the local organization, using local methods and tools and materials.
Wow, that's really nice. Now, what principles guide you in balancing helping communities without fostering dependency?
Yeah, so that's one of our core criteria when we're looking at a project, is that it in some way helps the local community stand on their own 2 feet. So we don't give out candy and money. We're building a classroom or a home or a wheelchair or something that is going to be something that local community member now uses to live on, to stand on for the rest of their lives. And that's part of our criteria. And because we are in these communities not just once and done, but we're there every month for years and years, we're able to keep that conversation going. Now, we have made mistakes. We have I remember we were putting in water filters up high in the Andes Mountains in Peru. We bought a bunch of Sawyer water filters, and they don't work high at altitude. And it really helped us learn that we've got to really first look to whatever extent we can to whatever is already working in that community and doing more of that. Where, it really doesn't make sense for us to try and we're not innovators of technology. We are partners with the local community with what they've decided, and we've gotten really more and more firmly entrenched in that approach to our projects.
I think that's what it is all about. It's evolving with every mistake that we do. And at the end of the day, we're still humans. We have to learn from it.
Yes, that's so true.
Absolutely. Now, how has working with diverse cultures reshaped your view of empathy and justice?
Yeah. So, boy, because that's all we do, right? Is we're interacting with these diverse cultures, and they certainly all have a very different perspective on so many things. And a big piece of what we're trying to do, we have these reflective exercises in the morning and the evening that are things that we'll ask, for example, in the evening, it might be name a kindness you saw today or something you learned. And in the morning, it will be something about that culture. So, for example, in Costa Rica, we may say, did you know that in Costa Rica, they do not use traditional postal mailing addresses? And it's always such a big surprise for visitors to learn things like that, which will make them question their own perspective. Well, how can you even operate? How can you even function if you don't do things the way we do that? So these guided reflection exercises are intended to show how very well these cultures can operate without doing things the way someone at home may do them. So we're really hoping that some of these guided exercises really help reshape people's view of what is right, what is wrong, and feeling that connection and empathy that they might not otherwise feel if they were just traveling there as a traditional consumer tourist, thinking about, hey, I'm here to see the churches and museums and eat the food, but not really understand beyond that postcard level view of that culture.
Well, that is so important. You've just hit the nail on. Because if until and unless we don't, as you rightly said, just a postcard tourist, consumer tourist who just wants to see the sights and that's it, and not understand about the culture. But that also takes a bit of effort, I understand.
Yes.
Now, with 350K followers and decades of projects, what impact are you proudest of?
I would say the fact that we continue to be invited back in these communities after decades is probably what I'm most proud of, because it probably says more than anything else. The fact that we still feel like we're partners and community members and still welcome. And that's not, it's not really necessarily what Globalware or what I'm doing. It's how our volunteers are behaving when they're there.
Wow.
So I'd say that.
That's quite an achievement, because you get calling back. If people call you back, I'm sure they appreciate what you're doing for them. Now, how do you measure the success of a short-term service beyond numbers and photos?
Yeah, so it is interesting because we don't, our metrics really aren't spreadsheets and numbers and things like that. It's, when we have a family of 4 volunteering, we're looking at, did we finish installing that concrete foundation for this family, and was there a connection? And I'll also go back to that, the fact that we're continuing to be invited back is another metric for us in terms of have we been successful here or not? Do they still want us here? Are they still willing to work with us? So yeah, we do look at it a little bit differently. We're not sitting there in front of, a bunch of shareholders with our charts and graphs, and we're not looking at how many flags have we planted on the map either. It's really down to more of a human by human engagement look. Yeah.
That's so true. And given in today's time where the only metrics or the currency that counts is the dollars and cents, whether it makes the stakeholders, is it making enough money for them or not? And being so human towards things like that, I think we need more people like you. Now,
yeah, well, it's our volunteers and our coordinators that are really doing the yeoman's work for all of this. We have to give kudos to them for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's the teamwork. I think you need a team to do all these to put in the effort and the work. Now, where do you see the future of sustainable volunteer programs in the next decade?
It's such a great question because we have so many things changing right now. Everything from government funding and USAID, which has been largely canceled and pulled back, and even how universities are able to engage and whether or not they need approval of a government philosophy in order to be funded. So it's a really good question. I think we're at a time of unusual change and shifting. And when I'm attending conferences and talking to university and corporate groups, we are really in a state of flux because we are, at the same time, we've got all these changes happening. We've got things like AI and new battery technology and so forth, and the globalization and translation services that are so much easier. So I wish I had a better view into that myself because I really don't know. I mean, on the one hand, you think, goodness, we've got so many tools available to us. How are they going to be used? So I would say I actually have more questions than answers about that.
I think we all have, with the current volatile or the VUCA world that we are in at this point in time. It's so uncertain times. I mean, I don't think it only affects people in America, but I think across the globe, if you look at it with what's going on and the uncertainty that is there, it's just looming all over all of us.
Right.
Now, as a social entrepreneur, how do you nurture purpose while sustaining an organization?
For us, it really begins with our mission statement. We really have to. And in our case, we are guided by the principle that anything we do needs to fit into one of two categories. It's got to either promote cultural awareness or promote sustainability. And from our perspective, the way we define those is, are we doing something that is going to promote understanding the real beauties and real challenges of a culture? And are we doing something that will help someone stand on their own 2 feet? And so really it's those guiding principles that are at the root of anything we do in terms of nurturing and sustaining what it is that we do.
Now, what role do mentorship and storytelling play in passing on the torch of service?
So, I think we're still in a sense discovering that ourselves. And I would say we hadn't really spent a lot of time on that until the last few years, where we started capturing these stories in things like our podcasts or right now, if somebody wanted to go in here, okay, if I'm going to go on the Galapagos program, what is that day-to-day experience look like? How does it make me feel? What kind of impact does it have? And trying to capture that in a way that's shareable. For years, we have certainly tried to share clips and things like that on social media. But it seems to be a longer life to be able to give others that viewpoint in terms of storytelling that's so easily shared, that we're really coming to terms with what a good medium this is for capturing really meaningful information, and in a way that is easily shareable for now and for future generations. And I do think it's got a huge role. I think before we were able to just share the little clips and photos, and now with this new technology, we feel like it's a really great place for that. And I hope everybody's doing that. I hope everybody's looking at, hey, I want to learn or be inspired by this or that, and seeing, whether it's a YouTube video or a podcast or whatever, that there are now so many avenues and channels for learning in more depth at little to no cost than what we had previously. So that's certainly a great new development for our generation.
You
Happy
know,
to say, right?
no, you are so rightly you pointed out. But with the current scenario, if you would be reading, I don't know, if you read the lot of marketing reports that are coming out, because I do read a lot of marketing and branding because that's where I come from. Uh, Today, the retention span of people,
Sure.
it has become so short, and especially with the content available out there. Yes, there is knowledge, there is content available out there, but at the end of the day, it also is whether are you willing to look at it, because I think we're living in times where we need instant gratification, we need
Yeah.
everything instant. So, and a lot of people don't understand it takes time to build everything. I think because I have reached an age where I've realized it takes time, because it doesn't happen overnight. Yes, when I was young, it was a different story. I mean, if you talk to me 30 years back when I started my career, I was a bit impatient, wanted everything happening, hush, hush. But today things are different. So I think
Yeah.
it's also about generation of the people, how much they want to learn, how much are they willing to put in the time and effort. Because I think today, with all the reports and the research that I read today, I think the problem with the Gen Z or the younger generation is very simple. They have this "we know it all," and that's something we need to drill into them hard and have
Yeah.
to find, not drill, but we have to find creative ways so that they find it, something that they can relate to. Like you said, the storytelling.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
how do you personally stay grounded after years of global travel and heavy logistics?
Oh, it finds us. We don't even have to worry about staying grounded. We've got so many, whether it's COVID, where all of a sudden all of the borders are closed, or the currency exchange rate has changed so drastically, or, we're even impacted by things like, as administrations change, our ability to do service with Cubans in Cuba can change. So we have so many dynamics and levers that are constantly changing that it keeps us from being able to get too overly comfortable or complacent about how things are going, because things are changing so quickly. And to your point earlier, how it does seem like they've got a super short attention span. And I've been guilty. For example, I hardly watch TV anymore, but on those few occasions I do, I might have, I don't know, the news on, and I'm also taking that time to scroll, and I got a newspaper, I've got all the different things. And yet, when I go work out or I drive or I clean, instead of just listening to music, now I'll go and listen to, any number of podcasts in a depth that I didn't previously. So I find my own habits have changed. I wish I had a better feel for what younger generations are doing. And so in terms of being grounded and knowing, hey, and logistics, what is going to keep us tethered to the ground? And it's kind of this constantly changing landscape where we're never quite allowed to feel fully comfortable, because we know something else is about to change, right?
Absolutely. Now, our podcast celebrates the bond between compassion, animals, and community. How do you see animals contributing to healing in service spaces?
Oh. Well, I feel like when people witness any animal, whether it's your 12-year-old Labrador in your home or on our Zimbabwe game count, where you're seeing the mother elephants sticking right by the babies and making sure that they are staying in a group, in a herd environment, or whether you're in the Galapagos and you're looking at these majestic creatures, totally unbothered by humans because they've been so protected and their ability to live, that these kinds of magical moments, I feel like restore something in your brain in terms of why are we all here? What is this planet about? What is this vitality of life even for? And somehow looking at these moments in animals does that in a really quick, efficient way that sparks something you can't write about. But when you see it in person, it does that, right? And it makes you feel like, hey, there is a purpose. You know, instead of just being in a cubicle in a gray dog-eat-dog competitive environment, you're seeing that fabric of life. And somehow I feel like we're sometimes more readily able to see it through animals, and it kind of heals our connection to the planet.
Be honest, I'll be honest. That's the whole point of this podcast coming into being. I mean, with the kind of hostility I have been facing in my mother's compound, where I take care of these 6 community dogs. There were 7. Now we have 6. One I had to take home. It's the kind of hostility which we face out here is what actually brought this podcast into being. And as you said, it's the compassion. I think for me, it was a natural evolution because of the spiritual path that I follow. And it was just a natural transition. And I'm so glad that even my wife, we align, at least when it comes to things like this, being compassionate to animals, because we have 3 at home. 2 are rescues, and as I said, I take care of another 6 in my mother's compound. So because I'll be also very honest, I'm very blunt about it. This is what my pocket can afford at this point in time. So that's what I do. Try and not restrict, but I just try and be very realistic about what I can do and what I can't. Now, moving forward, if you could design a dream project blending animal welfare and community development, what would it look like?
I tell you what, I feel like what we are missing at GlobalWare is the ability to let the communities where we serve. I wish the dream would be if there was a way for the local communities where we served to come and do an exchange, and for them to be able to live and feel a different reality. Because in the sense, for example, of animal community development in Zimbabwe, where you've seen community members killed by lions or your crops destroyed by elephants, if they're able to exchange places, then it's in any of our projects and programs, then that huge, larger global perspective on how do animals and wildlife, humans coexist and protect both the livelihoods of the animals and humans, since we are all animals. How can we do this in a harmonious way and give each other that perspective? And I feel like swapping places is a way to do it, but we haven't found a way for it to really be sustainable, because the cost in many of the communities where we work, and you may be aware of this, for someone in many of the communities where we work to even get a visa or a passport or the money to be able to travel and to see that it is unattainable for us right now. So in my dream world, people would be able to walk 1,000 miles in each other's shoes. And right now we're bringing a bit of the world to our communities, but we haven't really been able to do the reverse other than in our visit. So that's what my dream world would be like, is if our communities, we were able to experience that animal welfare, community development, project piece from each other's perspective. We haven't gotten there yet, but I hope we do one day.
Well, let's pray for it. We will all get there one step at a time. But that's a beautiful dream project, to be honest. it would make the world so much better. With what we are facing at this point in time, the hostility around, people and the humans, I think that would really make sense, for humanity to exist with the animal beings. Coming to the end of the last question would be, what's one message of hope would you like every listener to carry forward after hearing your story?
The big one would be that, you really don't need to be a brain surgeon to make a big difference on this planet, that you shouldn't hesitate, that there is somebody that needs your help, something that you can fix or plant and make a difference. And even small things, looking at what you eat and what the cost of eating that does for this planet and how it impacts that. These are small things that individually we can do that make a difference. And so to me, that would be the message, that don't feel like what you do is unimportant. Every one of us in small ways can have these big impacts, and try and feel how empowered we are. And really, it's only that, feeling our own empowerment and the changes we can make as individuals, that's where the change starts. That's where hope lives.
That's such a brilliant message, to be honest. As you said, just do a bit, whatever you can. Now, Kimberly, coming to the end part, I normally leave it as an open mic for for the guest to talk about their pet project, if they have something they would like our listeners to be supporting their project. And what I do as a part of giving back to the community, my way of giving back to the community is, when we release the podcast, we leave all the links of the guest, for their charity or whatever it is. We leave it open and we let people, communicate directly with you. That's our way of giving back to the community.
Neil, I appreciate that. And, so for anyone who is interested in doing any of our 1-week service projects, they're available throughout the year, pretty much every other week throughout the year. They're tax deductible to Canadians and U.S. citizens. We're easy to find wherever you look for things. If you're looking at our website, you'll see it at globeaware.org. If you're looking for our podcast, it's also Globe Aware is the handle. We're in all the places where you'd think to look, on Instagram, on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel, and we've tried to include content that is helpful for people, including your listeners, regardless of whether or not they're ready to serve abroad. If they're looking to say, how do I fill out my visa form to visit Cuba? Well, we'll show you a video. What should I expect to pack if I'm going to Costa Rica? Well, you can go and listen on our podcast. So we're trying to do engaging content that will be of service to people, regardless of their reasons for going someplace. So we'd really also love to chat with anybody who says, hey, I think I want to serve, but I haven't ever been, and I'm worried and not sure where to go and what's safe and all that. So we love having those discussions. So we really encourage anyone to reach out to us directly on any of our platforms. We have a phone number, 214-824-4562. We have a 1-800 number, all of that. So we try and make ourselves really easily accessible through the platforms that you're probably already engaging with. And Anil, I have to say thank you for letting me say all that. So thank you.
Please, as I said, this is the way of me giving back to the community. That's the best we can do for each other, to just empower the cause that we're all running for. It's being more human to animals, to humans. I think it's the same thing. Kimberly, thank you so much for taking the time from your busy schedule to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Anil, thank you. I really do appreciate it.